it's hard not to have opinions about everybody. Oftentimes I'm asked whenever I do any kind of presentation, whether it's on the Civil War or Teddy Roosevelt or anything like that, who do you think were the great presidents? That's an opinion. There are facts to back up the opinion, but it's still an opinion. So a lot of this is a lot of what I'm going to say is opinion to some extent. Okay, so the presidency of the United States. Nisha, how do I advance this? I'm sorry. Okay. All right. Okay, so 8 presidents have died in office, 4 from natural causes, and 4 from assassinations. Some of them, so William Henry Harrison was the first one to die in office. William Henry Harrison, he was a war hero. Up at that point, he was the oldest president elected, and he wanted to prove that he wasn't too old for the job. So when he gave his inaugural speech, it went for over 3 hours, and he caught pneumonia and died. So he was not only the first president to die, he was the shortest president. A little over 60 days he lasted as president. Zachary Taylor, another war hero, died of a ruptured stomach lining. Not sure exactly what caused the ruptured stomach lining, something he ate. The one story was that he was at a fair and he was eating fresh cherries by the basketful and then drank ice cold milk. And that the combination just kind of ruptured his stomach lining, and that was it for Zachary Taylor. Abraham Lincoln assassinated, Garfield assassinated, McKinley assassinated. When Lincoln was assassinated, it was kind of people never couldn't really imagine that happening. And there was a kind of a crisis about replacement, which to me always seemed kind of odd because they'd already made that decision twice before. But that really shook people up. So unfortunately, when Garfield was assassinated, McKinley was assassinated, we were kind of ready for it, I guess you could say. Warren G. Harding, he's the one I put in quotes because officially he died of food poisoning, but he was a very good-looking guy, and there were rumors that he was having an affair. And part of the rumor, hard to believe, I know, a president having an affair, who'd have thought? And there are rumors that the food poisoning wasn't natural food poisoning, so his wife might have had something to do with that. And Franklin Roosevelt died of complications of polio, and then Kennedy was assassinated. For a long time, there was this thing about the 20-year curse, that presidents elected in a year ending in 0 died in office. And that was true of all of them. Harrison, Taylor, Lincoln, Garfield, McKinley, Harding, Roosevelt were all elected in years ending in 0, then Kennedy. And then if that had followed the pattern, the next one would have been Ronald Reagan, who almost came close, yeah. And then maybe that kind of broke, if you believe in curses, maybe that kind of broke the curse that he survived. And then the 2000 would have been Mr. Bush. So, who knows? Okay, let's see. I don't want to mess this up.
Nisha, you better come over here and sit right there.
Nope, that didn't do it. Oh, I'm sorry, Nisha. I'll just point to the button. I'll remember it this time which button it is.
See myself at that computer.
That one, okay. Thank you.
Well, you warned us.
I did. So 8 presidents have been related to each other. The Adamses, father and son. William Henry Harrison and Benjamin Harrison were great-grandfather and grandson. Theodore Roosevelt and Franklin Roosevelt were cousins. George Bush and Judge Bush, father and son. And Andrew Johnson and Lyndon Johnson were not related, but the other 8 were. Which, when you think about it, is really kind of an interesting thing. We've only had 45 presidents, and to have 8 of them related to each other is kind of an interesting odds when you think about it. I think that may have been part of what, when Jeb was running for president last year, a year and a half ago, I guess, I think that kind of doomed him. Americans really weren't ready for another Bush. I did it. Okay. So the office of the president is established by the second Article 2 of the Constitution. It's very simple. The Constitution is a very simple document anyway. If you've seen politicians waving their constitutions, they're not very big. They're very tiny. It's not a very big document. The idea that the people who designed the Constitution had was that they would make it flexible, so they could as time went on they could make adjustments to the Constitution to fit what they needed. And the president's office is a perfect example of that. Very simple directions about what the president's supposed to be, and then presidents since then have kind of shaped it to fit them. Some presidents didn't want to do anything, and they didn't. It's interesting though, the ones who died in office, all those men who died in office, most of them, the vice presidents who became president, never wanted to be president and didn't even run for when they had a chance to run for election, didn't, because they didn't want the job. So then there have been some presidents who, while they were president, didn't seem to really want the job either. So Section 1 describes what he can and cannot do. It tells how the president's chosen, what the qualifications are. You have to be born in the United States or a territory of the United States. So for example, Barack Obama was born in Hawaii before it was a state. It was a territory. John McCain ran for president. He was born in Panama, on a military base in Panama. And so there have been a few like that. But mostly born in the United States. And you have to be at least 35. The youngest president we've had was Teddy Roosevelt, who was 39 when he became president. And he really wasn't, he didn't run to be president, but he was the youngest. Section 2 describes what the president's supposed to do. And the biggie being commander-in-chief. The only president we've had that really took the whole idea of commander-in-chief like to heart was George Washington. When the Whiskey Rebellion came, he's the only president in history that while he was president put on a uniform and actually went and led troops as commander-in-chief. Most presidents have just kind of done the job. I think and I've been noticing it's kind of interesting that it wasn't until Ronald Reagan became president that the presidents started saluting to the people who, like when the president gets off the helicopter, the Marine there salutes him, the president. Ronald Reagan was the first president to do that. Washington may have, we don't know for sure, but he's the first one in modern times to do that. And to me that seems kind of peculiar. I mean, Ronald Reagan served in the military, but he served in the propaganda part of the military. Let's see, we got Jimmy Carter was in the military, but he didn't salute. Both Bushes were in the military, and they saluted. So I was kind of peculiar that the president salutes at all, and I thought it was like Barack Obama didn't serve in the military, to me, so he didn't handle saluting very well. He wasn't very good at it, and Donald Trump didn't serve in the military, but his salute's good because he went to military school, so that he kind of learned how to be a good saluter in military school. And but the big thing that's also in Section 2 is the idea of advise and consent. That the President of the United States can't do whatever he wants to do. He's not a dictator. You've got the Senate and the House of Representatives to kind of hopefully keep him under control. He can't spend money without the House of Representatives. He can't make treaties without the Senate. He can't make war without the Congress. So that idea was kind of put there. And so the whole idea of executive orders became kind of a peculiar thing. Teddy Roosevelt was the first president to use executive orders on a big scale. He did over 3,000 executive orders when he was president. George Washington did 2. Even Lincoln, during a war, only did 47 executive orders. He had a Congress that was supporting him, so he didn't really need to. So Teddy Roosevelt kind of set the precedent, I guess, of presidents doing lots of executive orders. So he holds the record of over 3,000. Mr. Obama did a little over 200. Mr. Trump has already done 300, and he hasn't even been president for a year yet. So some people, as a constitutional person, executive orders kind of make me nervous because it's not following the process, in my opinion. But anyway, that's my opinion. Okay, so it continues to Section 3, describes the responsibilities. The one thing the president absolutely has to do is give a State of the Union address. No, they don't have any choice. They have to do that. Um, Washington and Adams went to Congress into the State of the Union. Thomas Jefferson hated speaking in public. He hated it. So he sent a letter instead. And that's the way presidents did it for over 100 years after Thomas Jefferson. They didn't go make a speech, they just sent a letter. Here's how things are going in the United States. That's what they're supposed to be doing. You know, what happened last year, what we'd like to do next year, and that was it. And then once the modern era came along and there's radio and television and newsreels and things like that, then the president started doing it because it's a great visual. You have the president standing in front of the whole government and talking about the State of the Union. And so and it wasn't until the 20th century that the presidents went back doing the State of the Union in front of everybody. He can make recommendations to Congress, but the president can't make laws. He can do executive decisions, and one of the things that you've seen recently is that one of the things that Mr. Trump has been doing is issuing executive decisions to cancel out the executive decisions made by President Obama. So I thought it was interesting. Yesterday he said, I've done the most action of any president in history. Basically what he's done is he's done so much action because he's canceling out everything that was done before. I don't know if that really counts as action, but he considers it action. The president calls the Congress to order and adjourns the Congress. If the president wants to keep them, he can. If they want to go on vacation, he says no, they have to stay. They don't have a choice. But the only president that's ever kind of used that was Franklin Roosevelt when the Depression was in such a mess. He said, you can't go home yet, we got too much to do. So, meeting foreign dignitaries. One of the things that's unique about our government is the president is not only the executive, he's also the representative of our country. In most other countries, they have two different people doing that job. They have one who runs the government and one who meets other countries, meets with other countries. Our president does both, which can be, depending on how good a president he is. And I apologize for using the he pronoun, but we can't say he or she. So, but no matter how good a president he is, if he doesn't present a good image to the world, that's kind of a negative. And so there have been times when we've had presidents where, like when Thomas Jefferson was president, because he didn't like to speak in public, the pirates in North Africa thought they'd challenge him. They said, "Oh, he's a wimp," and they seized some American citizens, and he had to send the Marines in to help, and that kind of shocked them. They said, "What? Wait, okay, I guess he's tougher than we thought." He's the person who executes the law. Technically speaking, constitutionally speaking, every law enforcement officer in the United States, including the Groveland Police Department, every law enforcement officer in the United States works for the president. Okay? That's why Mr. Trump has been so upset about different cities doing the sanctuary city thing with immigrants. He said, your cops work for me. And constitutionally, that's true. But obviously, there can be some debate about that as well. And then commissioning officers in the military. Anybody from ensign in the Navy up to a general, 5-star general, gets their commission from the President of the United States. Obviously, rarely does the President make that decision. Oftentimes with generals, especially the high ranking, like in World War II, Franklin Roosevelt was the person who said, "I think we should put Eisenhower in charge." And they did. But all officers, from the time they graduate from the military academy to their promotion, is all commissioned by the President. And that's part of the reason why I was just at a military funeral last week, and when they give the flag to, they gave the flag to the guy's mother. He wasn't married. They gave the flag, and they said, "A grateful president thanks you," because the person's there because the president put them there. And then the section 4 describes impeachment. Only 2 presidents have been impeached, Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton. Andrew Johnson was impeached because Congress passed a law that said Andrew Johnson was the man who took Lincoln's place. And one of the things that was unusual about Andrew Johnson was that Lincoln was a Republican and Andrew Johnson was a Democrat. And he was from the South. That's part of the reason why Lincoln chose him. He was trying to bind the country together. And soon after Johnson became president, Congress passed a law that said he couldn't fire anybody. Can you imagine that? The president wouldn't be able to fire. And Andrew Johnson said, that's a stupid law, and he fired somebody, and they impeached him for breaking the law, and went to the whole process. Now, a lot of times people get confused. Impeachment is the actual accusing the person of a crime. Then there's a trial that comes afterwards. So anybody can be impeached. Whether they lose, they're found guilty or not is a whole different thing. So Johnson was impeached and was found not guilty. And then Clinton was impeached basically for, when you think about it, for messing around and then lying about it. To me, that always seemed kind of, the impeachment says in the impeachment for high crimes and misdemeanors. I guess messing with an intern is a misdemeanor, but I don't know if it's an impeachable misdemeanor. But so it describes.
That's your opinion, right?
But it's my opinion.
Several other presidents could have been impeached.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, it's just it's like the current scandals now in the House of Representatives. I have a feeling that if every congressman and senator who ever sexually harassed a woman was kicked out, we'd have an empty Congress. Like 6 guys would show up. Mike Pence, because he never shows up anywhere without his wife, so he's safe, but everybody else. Electoral College is one of my pet peeves. This is how the president's chosen. When they wrote the Constitution, they were worried about the mob. They were afraid that the average American wouldn't make good choices. So they created the Electoral College. Technically speaking, the Electoral College, what happens is when you go to vote, you're not voting for the person, you're voting for the Electoral College representatives. And they vote any way they want. They go to usually the Electoral College meets a month after the election, which in the old days was to give them time to get to wherever they were going to make the vote. But they can vote for anybody they want. And it's happened in history that like for example, when Ronald Reagan won with a landslide in his first election, there were about 6 or 7 members of the Electoral College who voted for his opponent because they knew he was going to win in a landslide. But when asked why they did it, they said the only president who ever won like 100% of the electoral votes was George Washington. And no, we're not. We're going to say that. We're going to save that honor for him. And so they didn't. But the other thing about the electoral, so it kind of is insulting to me as a voter, I think. And the other thing is, if you think about it, someone has pointed this out to me several years ago, and I thought, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Wyoming or Montana. Montana has 3 electoral votes. They have a population of voting population of 150,000 people. So that means that 50,000 people get to pick one elector in Montana. California has 55 electoral votes, and they've got 30 million voters. So that means that in Montana, 50,000 people get to choose an elector. In California, it's like 750,000 pick an elector. And to me, that's just there's something wrong with that system. I don't want to leave Montana out, but hey. So it's I think it's a very flawed system, but it would it's in the Constitution. So if you're going to make any changes, you'd have to change the Constitution. And there's every time, especially in the last election and the one before that, or in the 2000 election, the Electoral College kind of messes up. People kind of wonder maybe she would kind of rethink how this works. Okay, any questions at this point? Have a kind of basic understanding of the office? Yes.
The Electoral College is due to the population of the state.
Right.
Now, these populations like California is going smaller.
Right.
Would they be taking electoral votes away from them?
Yeah, in Massachusetts that's happened. Massachusetts at one point had 15 electoral votes, now it's got 9.
Yeah, that was the same thing that happened to California then.
Yeah, right. But the thing is that they have a minimum. The least the state can have is 3. Even if they've got 10 people, they still get 3 electoral votes. So that's kind of that's where the imbalance comes in. Yes.
I just want to mention that one of the original copies of the Constitution is in the museum in Exeter, New Hampshire.
One of the ones they sent out after the That was ratified?
Pardon?
They sent out copies of the Constitution around the country. Is that one of those?
That's why they got
sent
one
out?
of the original copies
Yeah.
in Exeter at,
Do you know where they have it in Exeter?
yeah, it's right in, if you go to Exeter, up on the hill in the main part, there's a building that's yellow,
Uh-huh.
and that's a museum.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
One of the original copies.
Oh, I didn't know that. The original one I've seen has been at the National Archives in Washington. Okay, George Washington, first president, served 2 terms. He kind of set the precedent. Only one president has not served more than 2 terms. That was FDR. Everybody else is kind of limited themselves to 2, or the voters have limited them to 1. But George Washington kind of set the precedent. In fact, he said when they were writing the Constitution, they were in their minds. They said, you know who the first president's going to be? It's going to be George Washington. Everybody kind of knew that's going to be the first president. And so when they were designing the office, they were picturing George Washington doing it. And so that they kind of had in their heads, okay, this is, so George Washington has this characteristic, so this will work out good. This, whatever things they were putting in the Constitution, they really honestly believe that every president after him will be as good as he was, but unfortunately, that wasn't true. Pardon me?
Question.
Yeah.
How long did it take them to put that Constitution together?
They were, well, when they first met in committee, until the time that it was finally ratified was 6 months. A lot of the work was done in like a 6 or 8 week period, right in the middle of it. But from the beginning, when they first realized they needed to, because the Articles of Confederation, which they had set up during the Revolution, just weren't working. And that was the last time we had a constitutional convention. And whenever they talk about making changes to the Constitution, that makes me a little bit nervous, because the first time we had one, they threw out the old one and put a whole new in. And so that's something that theoretically could happen. So we haven't had one since then. We've settled with doing amendments instead. So, which I think is a little political aside. Judge Roy Moore in Alabama said the other day that the country would be a lot better off if we just kept the first 10 amendments and got rid of the rest of them. So, okay, so George Washington.
Just let him do his thing.
Yeah. Okay. Characteristics of George Washington. One of my favorite things about him was he was really strong. Physically, he's the 2nd tallest president. He's physically very strong. When he was younger, he used to do bar tricks with his strength. He could take a horseshoe and bend it straight with his bare hands. And the other bar trick he used to win a lot of drinks in bars. The other bar trick he used to do is he would take a walnut and crack it with just 2 fingers. Just crack a walnut. So physically very strong. He loved horseback riding. It's probably what killed him in the end, because he went horseback riding in a rainstorm and caught pneumonia and died. He was the first president to get his face on a stamp. We love the guy. He's the first one. When he ran for president, there were 12 candidates for president. 12 candidates. Obviously, I mean, the vote was split. And when the Constitution was originally written, the plan was that the guy who came in first was president, and the guy who came in second was vice president. That's the way it worked. And the guy who came in second was John Adams, so John Adams became the vice president. So electoral votes, the other 11 guys got 34 electoral votes, and he got 69. And then he's the only president, as I said, was the only president who actually wore military uniform while he was president during the Whiskey Rebellion. John Adams. First, only 1 term. Probably a very smart guy, probably a pretty good president, but everybody hated his guts. He was, if you've ever seen the movie, the play 1776, or the movie, one of the lines in it, they're talking about John Adams is, you know, you're obnoxious and disliked. And he says, yeah, I know that's true. Even in the Constitutional Convention, the writing of the Declaration of Independence, and when he was president, people just didn't like the guy. He had a hard time. He's the first president to live in the White House. He had a hard time figuring out what position the president has. He thought people should call him Your Excellency, which aggravated people because they just defeated a king who called. They said, no, we're not going to call you Your Excellency. And he really kind of had troubles with that whole thing, and people thought he was trying to change things. He was the first president elected with a political party after his name. George Washington did not belong to a political party. In fact, when he gave his farewell address, he said, political parties are a terrible idea. Avoid them if you can. They're going to ruin the country, which is interesting when you think about it. The reason that there were political parties was basically disagreement over how the Constitution should be interpreted. On the one hand were the people like Alexander Hamilton who believed that the government should be a strong central government. And then on the other side, people like Thomas Jefferson who thought that the government should be as weak as possible, until he became president, and he kind of changed his mind. I think that happens lots. You see all through history these guys running for president campaigning, less government, and it's never happened that there was less government, no matter who said it. The first Bush, President Bush, that was his big campaign thing, less government, and the government doubled in size when he was president. So I think once they get there, they realize it's a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. In fact, I've been interesting. At least 2 occasions I've seen President Trump say that in a speech, this job's harder than I thought it was going to be. I said, well, yeah. The most powerful man in the world, just, of course. So he was the first president to live in the White House. It wasn't finished yet when they moved in, but he was the first president to live there. And again, they didn't know what to call the house. They didn't even know what to call the White House. They called it the Presidential Mansion. It wasn't until Teddy Roosevelt came along that they started calling it the White House. He said, it's not really a mansion, because kids kind of wrecked it, I guess. It's not a palace, what people want to call the presidential palace. And let's just call it the house, the White House. And I liked how when President Obama became president, he said, I'm moving into public housing. So it's, technically we own that house. So he was one of the only 2 presidents to sign the Declaration of Independence. Yes.
Is there any operational offices in the White House itself? Is any stuff come out of there, real work? Or?
Well, the West Wing is attached to the White House, but the president's office isn't in the White House anymore. It's in the West Wing that's attached.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Are there other business offices, other offices as well as this?
Oh, yeah. Both wings of the White House have been added on. It was where all the work gets done.
Supposedly.
Yeah, and that was another thing I thought Obama was kind of clever about pointing out. He said one of the great things about this job is when I go home, I just have to go upstairs. He doesn't have to, no commute. When he ran, there were 11 people who ran for president, and he got 138 to 69. And so Thomas Jefferson came in second. People liked him better. He was better looking. He was smarter. He had been the ambassador to France. He was more sophisticated. But John Adams, it was kind of like we fall into the trap, I think, every once in a while, even today, of saying, okay, it's his turn. I remember when Romney was running against President Obama, one of the things you heard from commentators a lot was, well, the main reason he's president is because it's his turn. And I think we got to kind of rethink how we do that, not just because it's somebody's turn. Thomas Jefferson. I've always had kind of mixed feelings about Thomas Jefferson. I liked John F. Kennedy once was having a meeting of all the great scientists and philosophers and thinkers in America at the White House. There were like 20 people there. And his opening remarks was, this is the greatest collection of American intelligence since Thomas Jefferson sat here by himself. He was probably one of the smartest presidents. Brilliant guy. And like I said, he was very much against a strong central government, but he made a strong central government. In my opinion, as a Thomas opinion, I think a strong central government makes much more sense. Part of the reason they formed the government in the first place was they realized that individual states couldn't survive on their own. The times that we've had wars, the times that we've had depressions, all kinds of other problems. A strong central government is what has made the difference between life and death in a lot of ways. So, smart guy, talented guy, inventor, probably, well, I was going to say cheated on his wife, but his wife had died, so he cheated on her memory, I guess you could say. You know. But for me, and part of the reason he's on Mount Rushmore, I mean, Washington's on the, look at who's on Mount Rushmore. Washington is there because he's the first president. Jefferson's there because of the Louisiana Purchase. Okay, Mount Rushmore is in where the Louisiana Purchase was, so he gets the credit for that. Abraham Lincoln's there because he saved the Union, and Teddy Roosevelt's there because he started the national park system. So that's why the four people that they've chosen are there. And so he thought when he was running for president, he said getting Louisiana would be a terrible idea, and then 2 years later he got Louisiana. Because he realized it wasn't such a bad idea after all. His favorite vegetable was peas. He played the violin. He had a pet mockingbird named Dick. He donated his personal library to the United States Library of Congress. During the War of 1812, the Library of Congress was burned by the British. And so he said, well, we've got to have a library. So when he died, he left it in his will that his library, which is one of the biggest and best in the country, was donated. And so that's the core of the Library of Congress today, is the library that he donated to the country. In the election of 1800, he had 4 opponents. This is the first one where there was a tie. The 73 to 73 electoral votes, because there were 4 opponents. So they had to go to Congress to break the tie. That's the way it works. If there's a Electoral College vote, then it goes to Congress, which makes it, you can see really, which party is in charge of Congress really has an important impact on the possibility of ties. And so during his, so he was the first president that on the ballot it said that he had a political party. It's called the Democratic Republican. So Aaron Burr came in second in the election, and so he became the vice president. And part of the reason the Congress voted against him was that Alexander Hamilton kind of lobbied against Aaron Burr, and which resulted in Alexander Hamilton getting shot by Aaron Burr. So the vice president of the United States, there have been vice presidents who have committed crimes, but he killed the guy. And during his second run, when he was running president the second time, the 12th Amendment was passed to change the way the vice president was chosen. They said, this is just, I mean, can you imagine today, if we still had that system, Hillary Clinton would be vice president of the United States. Can you imagine what the meetings would be like? Oh, here's the vice president, lock her up. No, it's just, so they changed it when he was running for the second time to the 12th Amendment, which is the way we've got it now. James Madison, shortest president in history, 4'10". He was one of the writers of the Bill of Rights. He said when they were writing the Constitution, they said, okay, we're all set. He said, no, wait a minute. He didn't put anything about civil rights. And so his insistence, they added the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, which give us our basic civil rights. He was probably one of the writers. There's something called the Federalist Papers. There was an argument for the Constitution, to pass the Constitution, and he and Hamilton were probably the 2 writers. Officially, it was anonymous, but you could tell by the style that was.
You list him on there as 5'4".
But no, well, in his high heels, he was a little tiny guy. He was smaller than his wife, Dolly, who was kind of a petite person anyway. That's the first president to wear long pants, making the shift over from the breeches. And he was a Democratic Republican who won 128 to 89 his first time. He was elected twice as well. Then came Monroe, Madison Monroe. Madison was president during the War of 1812. Monroe, his famous thing was the Monroe Doctrine, which basically said Europe stay out of our affairs. And it's pretty much, even though it was written in 1818, it's pretty much the way we've had it ever since. He was the first president to ride on a steamboat. That was a new technology. His favorite meal is chicken and biscuits, which probably he shouldn't have eaten so much of. And then he won the first election, 183 to 34, as a Democratic Republican. John Quincy Adams. If it's possible, he was hated even more than his father was. He was the first president to have his photograph taken. Someone pointed this out to me the other day. I realized, and I said, "Oh, that makes sense." Until cameras were invented, the average person, not rich people, but the average person didn't know what he or she looked like. Think about it, because only rich people had mirrors. So the average person didn't know someone, I remember once I was showing photographs to a class of students, and someone said, "It looks like everybody got their picture taken." That was kind of the thing, because it was a way to find out what you looked like, to go and have your picture taken. Oh, that's what I look like. Oh, okay. He had a pet alligator, kind of a peculiar guy. His hobby was raising silkworms. Corn and fruit were his favorite foods, which probably maybe explained why he was in such a bad mood all the time. So he's the first president to lose the Electoral College, 84 to 89. And he lost the popular vote, 113,000 to 151,000. But because neither one got the majority, again it went to the House of Representatives, and the guy who ran against Andrew Jackson, he beat him. A lot of backroom manipulation. So he lost the electoral vote and he lost the popular vote, but he still became president. Which explains a lot why Andrew Jackson hated John Quincy Adams with a passion. It's all political maneuvering. And Andrew Jackson was kind of a crude guy. Probably is why Mr. Trump likes him so much. But he was really kind of a crude guy. And when it went to the House of Representatives, they said, "No, he's not very presidential." So they went with John Quincy instead. And then comes along Andrew Jackson.
Over 100 years and he's still in the news.
Yeah.
They're taking his statue down, or trying to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because his nickname was the Indian Killer. That's
The only good Indian was a dead Indian.
that was one of his quotes, actually. That's right. So he was not the most politically correct kind of guy. Very popular at the time. He's the only president. Well, not the only, but he was the first president who was an orphan. All the presidents before that, he was the first one who wasn't from either Virginia or Massachusetts. Virginia and Massachusetts kind of took turns choosing the president. Went from Washington to Adams, to Jefferson, to Madison, Monroe, to Adams. So it went back and forth, Virginia, Massachusetts. He was from Tennessee. He was a war hero, War of 1812. That's kind of, I think, what got him elected president. His nickname was Old Hickory, because he was always tough in battle. I think he proved consistently throughout American history, generals have been popularly elected, but usually not very good at their jobs, not very good at being president. They're very good generals. Andrew Jackson was a really good general, especially if he didn't like Indians, I guess. But he was not a very, in my opinion, was not a very good president. He thought he was against. He thought science was made up, fake news. So when people, there was a globe in the Oval Office, and he said, "Get rid of that. The world's not round; it's flat." So they got rid of the globe. Being from the rural West, turkey was his favorite meal, and he was the first president to get elected president as a Democrat. And you can see the Electoral College, he really cleaned up. Popular vote, a little over 100,000 he won by. But he was very much against the national bank, so he tried to get rid of that. He did everything he could to kill as many Indians, even when he was president, to kill as many Indians as he possibly could. So he's not high on my list. I think it's interesting. I mean, there's talk now about putting a woman on a bill, on one of the paper money, and they're saying, well, which guy should we get rid of? And the popular suggestion is Andrew Jackson. Replace his space with a woman. They haven't picked out which woman they want to have yet, but in my opinion, I kind of go along with that because I don't think it was as wonderful as people seem to think. Martin Van Buren, see, we got a photograph of Martin Van Buren. He was the first president who was actually born in the United States, because all the other guys were born before we were in the United States. So he's technically the first one born in the United States. He had two pet tigers. Can you imagine what the White House must have been like? An alligator for Quincy Adams and tigers for Van Buren. He liked oysters and donuts, which kind of makes sense because he was from New England. He was a Democrat who won big as well.
You said he was from New England?
Yeah, yeah.
I thought he was from New York State.
He was born in he was born in Hampshire,
Okay.
but he moved to New York.
Yeah.
But yeah, they named the town of Maine after him, after he was president. That's his claim to fame, I think. Some of these guys I'm going to go through kind of fast because they kind of William Henry Harrison, he's the guy who only lasted 60 days. I mean, this was his campaign picture. He looks like he's on death's door already. He was a doctor and a war hero. When he campaigned for president, the campaign slogan was Tippy Canoe and Tyler too, because that was the battle that he had gained fame with, the Battle of Tippy Canoe against the Native Americans. He had a pet goat named Whiskers. He was the first president to die in office, and only after a month. I said 60 days. Actually, it's less than 60. It was like 45 days. His party was the Whig Party. Again, a big winner in the Electoral College, with a lot closer popular vote. John Tyler, that's the vice president. He had the most children of any president. He had 16 children, or 15 children. He was the president they created Hail to the Chief for the presidency, and then they started playing it, dum ba da dum ba da dum. That was him, and he hated being president. He hated it, and so he didn't. When it came time for him to run for re-election, if he wanted to, he said, "Nah, this is the worst job in the world. I don't want to do this." And back when the election was going on, and there were like 30 people running for office, someone asked me, who would you support? And I used to use the quote that Groucho Marx used to say. He said, I would not join any club that would make me a member. And I kind of feel the same way about anybody running for president. You have to kind of wonder what's going on in their heads. Because anybody who runs for president, I'm kind of suspicious of, because it's, I think we've had people ran because they thought they loved their, George Washington said several times, I don't like this job, but it's something that needs to be done, and I'll do it. But you haven't had many like that. James K. Polk, he's so unassuming, I just put everything on the picture. He was the first president to have gas lights installed in the White House. They went from candles and kerosene lanterns. He was a Democrat, 170 to 103. And see the popular vote, very close in the popular vote as well. Zachary Taylor. He never voted in his life. He thought voting was a terrible idea. The President of the United States thought that voting was a terrible idea. He was a tobacco chewer. When he left the White House, they couldn't get the stains out of the floor of his spitting. He was the second president to die in office. That's the one with the ruptured stomach lining. He was a Whig. And again, popular vote's really close on these guys. We realized that the only people who could vote were white men who owned property. So, Millard Fillmore. Good old Millard Fillmore. He became president when Taylor died. Again, he hated being president. So when it came time for him to run on his own, he didn't do it. He's one who decided to have a library put into the White House. So I assume that he liked to read, which is not true of every president. He also had plumbing put into the White House. Hooray! Plumbing in the White House.
They still have bathtub races over in a small town in New York State in commemoration of him being president.
Is that right?
Yeah, over at that.
I heard about the bathtub race, but I didn't know there was a connection between
I
them.
think it's in Moravia.
Which is where he was from.
Yes.
Yeah. And he was the 13th president. I figured he was always kind of unlucky, kind of in a bad spot. And he hated being president. Franklin Pierce, he was the first one to put a Christmas tree in the White House. He loved fishing, and just like there's some presidents who disappear by playing golf, he would go disappear going fishing. He loved going fishing. And big win electorally, a little bit bigger win popular vote. James Buchanan was the only president who wasn't married. There are rumors, but I think that I don't know, I take them with kind of grain of salt. There are rumors that the reason he was not married is because he was maybe gay, but there was a time back a few years ago when people were kind of saying, there was rumors going on that Abraham Lincoln was gay, because he wrote in his diary about staying at an inn and sharing a bed with a man. But people didn't realize that back in the 1800s, if you went to an inn, you didn't get your own bed. So if you were lucky, he was just sharing with one guy. But Buchanan, we're not sure. His niece did the jobs of First Lady while he was president. But he's the only president we ever had who wasn't married. He was the first president to send a telegram, and he was a Democrat. And he's a big winner, but a lot of people kind of put the blame on him for the Civil War, because he kind of dithered through the problems that were causing. So that's okay. Good old Abraham Lincoln. I always thought it was interesting. He was the first president to have a beard. He's a perfect example of photographs showing what the presidency does to a person. It just really, I mean, overseeing the death of hundreds of thousands of Americans, and so he took it hard. Tallest president, 6'4". He loved to wrestle. Even when he was president, he would wrestle. People thought it was undignified, but he didn't care. His son, one of his sons died while he was president in the White House. He had a cat named Bob and a dog named Jib. He was the third president to die in office, and in the first election, he won handily because there were 3 Democrats running against him, and that kind of gave him an edge. So he's the first Republican president as well. Andrew Johnson, again, he had kind of a drinking problem. He was impeached. He was the first president to meet the Queen of England, who came here. Presidents didn't leave the country. He was a tailor before he got into politics, so he made all of his own clothes. It's kind of an interesting decision to make. And he was a member of the National Union Party. I always felt kind of bad for Johnson because, again, he didn't like being president. Everybody loved Abraham Lincoln and didn't like him. He did have a drinking problem, and then they impeached him, so it was not the best. Good old Mr. Grant. His real name is Hiram Ulysses Grant. But he went to West Point, you had to put your initials in your underwear. So his initials were H-U-G, and he was embarrassed that his initials were H-U-G, so he changed his name to Ulysses Simpson Grant, so that his initials would be different. Big hero of the Civil War, smoked 20 cigars a day, died of cancer of the jaw and mouth. He smoked 20 cigars a day. He loved to eat cucumbers, and he's a Republican. His second election, look at the electoral vote, 286 to 0. And because he was a hero, he's a real hero. I mean, he was a terrible president. He was a great hero, in my opinion. He's a hero. I'm sorry. And he really made some bad investments when he finished being president, and went bankrupt. And then Mark Twain stepped in and had him write his memoirs and publish his memoirs, and he's able to live off the royalties from his memoirs, all because of Mark Twain. Mark Twain just kind of stepped in and helped him out. He said he's one of the great American heroes. You can't let him let the guy starve to death. Rutherford B. Hayes. He was a Civil War veteran who was wounded. He was the first president to have a telephone in the White House. He started the White House Easter egg hunt on the lawn. He's a Republican, and this was an election where the Electoral College got rigged. He ran against a man named Tilden in the 1876 election, and the South made a deal. He worked out a deal with Southern states that he would end Reconstruction, pull the troops out of the South, if they switched. He lost the electoral votes in the South, and the Electoral College showed up, and he promised, if you vote for me instead of Tilden, I'll pull the troops out of your states. So they did. So this is an example of, I mean, he lost the popular vote, and he just barely won the electoral vote. And this is where one of the times where there's a lot of cheating that went on. It's kind of unfortunate, I think, but that's what can happen in that kind of system. Garfield, first left-handed president. Haven't been many. Obama was. I think that's it. He was a preacher before he went into politics. He liked to juggle and nap. If they had Sudoku, he would have done that. He's the second president assassinated, killed in a train yard. Chester Alan Arthur took his place. Again, did not like being president, so didn't run when he had his chance. All we can say about him is he liked lamb chops and liked to fish, and that was it for him. Grover Cleveland, first president to have a major sex scandal. When he ran for president, he was elected in 1885, and he was running for re-election. A woman came out and said that he was the father of her illegitimate child, and that kind of freaked people out. And so he lost, and then he ran again in 1892, and this time he won again. So he's the only president to get elected, to lose, and then get elected again in between. He got married while he was in the White House, and while he was there, his wife had a baby named Ruth, and named the candy bar after her. Milky Way? No, Baby Ruth. Sorry, bad joke. He's the first president to be in a movie. He loved to hunt, and he won the every time. Even the times he lost, he won the popular vote. The Electoral College. Benjamin Harrison had electricity put into the White House. He was called the human iceberg. You kind of get that sense from the picture. He never smiled. He lost the popular but won the electoral. There's another one. The popular vote, he lost by 100,000. He won the electoral vote. William McKinley, he was the first president to ride in a car. He led the United States during the Spanish-American War. He was assassinated, making Teddy Roosevelt president. Very religious guy. When he decided to declare war on Spain in the Spanish-American War, he said he did it because God told him to. Teddy Roosevelt, this is the picture taken when he was sworn into office. He was 39 years old, and he looks like a kid, doesn't he? It's amazing that, and the thing is that the only reason he was vice president was because he had been governor of New York, and he was causing the Republican Party in New York was very corrupt. He was trying to straighten it out, and so the party leaders in New York said, "We got to get rid of this guy. He's ruining our deal here in New York." So someone said, "Let's make him vice president, and he'll disappear. We'll never have to worry about him again." So they did, and he got elected vice president. And a few months later, Lincoln McKinley was assassinated. In comes Teddy Roosevelt, and the leader of the Republican New York, it's my famous line, he says, "Oh my God, the damn Cowboys, President of the United States." So that was it for good old Teddy. He was the first president. He was very adventurous. He's the first president to fly in an airplane, the first president to ride in a submarine. He was the first president to leave the United States while he was president. He went to Panama. He changed the name of the presidential palace to the White House. He won the Nobel Peace Prize. He was nominated for the Congressional Medal of Honor, but they didn't give it to him because they said it would make him too popular. He liked to box, which was probably not a good idea because he had a detached retina in his left eye. He was blind in his left eye. He liked to box. The teddy bear was named after him because he wouldn't kill a bear when someone wanted him to. And he ran again and lost in 1912. He was served till 1908. Said, I'm not going to go against Washington, and he picked Taft to take his place. And in his opinion, Taft did a terrible job, so he ran again in 1912 and lost. One of my favorites, good old Teddy. Taft, biggest president, weight-wise, not the tallest, but the biggest. He was big, you see pictures of him in college. He was big in college. He was always a big guy. 332 pounds. He had a pet cow. When Teddy Roosevelt was president, he had little kids living in the White House. So they had horses in the elevators, and goats eating the furniture, and so like as a pet cow is kind of tame. He was the first president to actually own a car. He was the first president to throw out the first pitch in the opening season. Mr. Trump has broken that tradition. And then after he was president, he always wanted to be a Supreme Court justice. And when Teddy Roosevelt asked him to run for president, he wasn't going to go. He wasn't going to do it. But his wife talked him into it. She said, "I want to live in the White House." He said, "I don't want to be president." "No, I want to live in the White House." "Oh, okay." And then he really, after he was president, he got to do the job he really wanted to do, which is to be a Supreme Court justice. Good old Woodrow Wilson is kind of going through the rethinking him as the president because he was kind of a racist, kind of. He was the first president who golfed like as much as he possibly could. He was president during World War I. He was kind of a miser, so instead of having the White House lawn mowed, he had sheep eat the grass to keep the lawn down. And he had a stroke while he was president. And this is his wife, Edith. The reason I include her picture is because, in my opinion, Edith was the first woman president of the United States. Because Wilson had the stroke and was probably a lot more incapacitated than people really knew. And so only she got to see him and his doctor. And she'd come out and she'd say, "The president wants you to do this." And they would do it. And she learned how to copy his signature. So I think she was president of the United States for a while. Good old Edith Wilson. Warren G. Harding had the biggest feet, which may explain why he was such a ladies' man. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. He was the first president to broadcast on the radio. So he was the first president that women could vote for. And some people think that that had something to do with his win because he's kind of, at the time people thought he was a very good-looking guy. Okay. But he was the first president where women could vote. And you can see the popular vote goes way up now because now twice as many people are voting. And he's one whose death was kind of a mystery. They said it was bad shellfish, but I'm kind of suspicious of that one. Calvin Coolidge, silent Cal, he hated using the telephone. He thought it was the devil's instrument. He was from Vermont, but he had been governor of Massachusetts for a while. He took Harding's place and he liked being president. And so he ran for office and got elected on his own after almost double the popular votes. Herbert Hoover, not a bad president. He had the misfortune of being president when the Great Depression started, and people blamed him. I think the blame came because he didn't want, as a Republican, he thought the government should not get involved in saving people. But people blamed him. There's a song in the play Annie, where there's a bunch of people living in homeless people. They're saying, "We'd like to thank you, Herbert Hoover, for showing us the way to poverty." He was a very smart guy. Could speak fluent Chinese. Was an engineer. He's the one who initiated making the Star Spangled Banner anthem. We didn't have a national anthem until Herbert Hoover came along. The first Al Smith ran against him. Was the first Catholic to run, and he beat him. You can see electoral votes really. I think people were not ready for a Catholic president, so that helped him a lot. And the little FDR. He was the first president to appear on television. He was the first president to have his own, like, Air Force One kind of thing. He had polio, so he was in a wheelchair, but they very rarely took pictures of him in a wheelchair. He led the country through the Great Depression, to World War II, and has the record for longest serving, elected 4 times as a Democrat. And in 1936, won by 11 million votes. Look at the Electoral College, just really blew him away. Harry Truman, the S did not stand, it was just S, he didn't have a middle name. He just thought he should have a middle name, so he put S in there. He served in World War I. He was partially deaf because he served in the artillery. He's a very talented piano player. Succeeded FDR when he died. Led us to the end of World War II and authorized the atomic bomb. He's the first president I ever saw in person. When I was a kid, I lived in Key West, and that was where the summer White House was. And I remember my mom saying, "That's the president of the United States." So he used to take walks around Key West all the time. Dwight Eisenhower, I have kind of mixed feelings about him. He was a very talented general. He happened to be president at a time when the United States was doing really well. And so people liked him for that. I like Ike was the big thing. He had fought in World War I and World War II. He was the only president who could actually fly himself in a plane. His hobby was cooking. And he was the first president we had actually 50 states when he was president. JFK was a Boy Scout, was in World War II. He's the only Catholic president who was involved in Vietnam and was assassinated. LBJ became president, led us kind of into the Vietnam War really. The civil rights president. He has the largest popular vote win up to that time, 43 million votes he got against 27. Because he ran against not Goldberg, Goldwater. Ran against Goldwater, who was kind of an edge of the realm kind of guy. So, good old Tricky Dick was a football player. That's where you'd find him on Sundays when he was in the White House watching football. He was the first president to go to China, and he was the first president to resign. He probably would have been impeached, but he quit before he could be. And when he ran for president, notice he only won by a few 100,000 popular votes, because one of the person who ran against, the other person who ran was George Wallace, who got 9 million votes as the white supremacist candidate, I guess you could say. Well, I didn't call him that. Good old Jerry Ford. Okay, I'm almost done, yeah. Jerry Ford his name was Leslie King when he was born, but he was adopted and changed his name. Left to play football. He's the only president that wasn't elected president, or vice president. So he's the only one that ever became president for that. Jimmy Carter was a Navy submariner, peanut farmer. During his time, one elector who was supposed to vote for him voted for Reagan, even though Reagan wasn't running. It's kind of a foreshadowing, I guess. Good old Ronnie Reagan, loved horseback riding. He was the oldest president until Trump. H.W., very good baseball player. Last person to serve in World War II. And one elector who was supposed to vote for him voted for Boyd Benson. He wasn't even running. Bill Clinton, his name was William Blythe, and he was adopted. Plays the saxophone, second president impeached. Perot won 19, Ross Perot ran against him, won 19 million popular votes, didn't get one electoral vote. So you're getting something wrong with the system. If you get 19 million votes and don't get any electoral votes, there's just something wrong there. Bill George W., again a baseball player. One electoral person wouldn't vote for him at all. Wouldn't vote for anybody. You have that right. In Florida, the results were disputed. Barack Obama, first African American. And then Donald Trump.
Good picture.
Yeah. He had least amount of popular votes since 2000. Less than Bush or Obama. Less popular votes than, but he
Still to be determined though.
Yeah, and if you see the popular vote, he lost by 3 million of the popular vote, but
To be determined.
be determined. Questions? Yeah.
Given the, when you talked about the electoral vote and the poor distribution of numbers, what is the, I was trying to look for pictures to see what was the worst combination of winning the popular vote and losing the electoral vote?
Probably John Quincy Adams. John Quincy Adams lost them both and still became president.
I was thinking where it goes the other way,
Oh,
where
the
the electoral vote puts him in office,
Yeah.
but the popular vote does not.
The last one, probably.
Okay.
Yeah, because the Gore-Bush one was 500,000 votes separated. Gore won by 500,000 votes popularly. Mrs. Clinton won by 3 million votes popularly, so.
And Clay threw that election to Adams too, because they agreed on so many political ideas.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Yes.
Are the rules for how the Electoral College votes, is that different state to state?
Yeah. Each state decides when the presidential election's coming, the state gets together, which is why state politics are really important. And they pick, like say Massachusetts picks 9 electors who will vote for the Democrat, and 9 electors who will vote for the Republican, and then 9 electors who will vote for if there's another candidate. And then whichever one wins the popular vote, those electors get to go to the Electoral College and vote.
Some states, all the electoral votes go to whoever wants.
Yeah, most states, they can do it. Some states allow a split. Maine allows a split. Michigan allows a split. Some states allow split electoral votes.
It's a split based upon the proportion of.
Yeah, that's usually the way it gets split. Like Maine, I think half went to Trump and half went to Clinton last time around. So.
The Constitution doesn't tell them how to divide.
No, it doesn't. It's what it is. What it said. It tried to make it okay. It's up to the states,
Yeah.
and so each state kind of does their own thing with the Electoral College. Anything else?
Lee, nice job.
Thank you.
That was
Thanks.
really